The Chris Johnston Show.
Let's go!
Your number one destination for a behind-the-scenes look at the game of hockey.
Is this thing on?
Here's NHL insider Chris Johnston and host Julian McKenzie.
Hey, CJ, where were you when you caught wind of the Quinn Hughes trade that went down a couple days ago?
Well, that was Friday evening. Mm-hmm. I believe it was in the 7s or maybe 8 o'clock Eastern time.
Yes.
And I had just arrived at a family holiday party. So I was not long in the door. I'd said the sort of cursory hellos to the people hosting, had some small talk, and then was like, oh no, I've got to go to the corner now with my cell phone.
Oh no.
And I was actually only making a small appearance there. It was only meant to be 90-minute visit. I wasn't camping in for the night anyway, but then I didn't see anyone really other than my cell phone. So
that is your life, right? Like, I mean, obviously you're a human being. You have to go to these social gatherings. But when a big trade of that magnitude pops off, like, you have to drop everything and go to the corner or go upstairs and either pull out a laptop or just work on your phone. Like, that must be hectic. Well,
it was fine. I mean, look, I was excited as anyone else who cares about hockey. Like, I wanted to be in the mix, right? I'm starting to text people. We're flushing it out. I actually did a brief phone hit for TSN pretty quickly, like right in real time. That was played on SportsCenter. I'm not complaining about it, but it's a fact of life. And the truth is, if you have a trade that goes down on a Friday night and it's December 12th, most people in the world are probably doing something social at that time. This is probably the most social month in the calendar outside of the summer, Friday night. And, it was a trade. Well, obviously we've been talking about the Quinn Hughes rumors. It was a trade that did come a little bit out of the blue. So there wasn't anything that made me think, I shouldn't go to this party tonight. And that's the business. But I honestly, I wouldn't trade it for anything. So, yes, it would be great if everything happened on a perfect schedule, but that's not the world we live in. And I will say, I know I mentioned this on the pod. This is unofficial. I have no way to quantify this, but I'm telling you, there are more trades going down on Friday nights or Saturday nights, like late, like not sort of way outside of business hours. So this is the new norm if you're doing all of our jobs.
So what did you think of the trade? Quinn Hughes going to Minnesota in exchange for Marco Rossi, Liam Ogren, Zeev Buium, and a 2026 first-round draft pick.
Well, it's a fascinating deal on a lot of levels. I think the coolest thing to me is that was the first and only offer from the Wild. I mean, it tells you that they understood the assignment in effect. They understood what it could mean to go out and get Quinn Hughes and how much you had to give up. In their case, that's 3 recent first-round picks, all under the age of 25 currently, and a first-rounder in this year's draft unprotected. That's a lot to give up. I'm not by any means saying it. I'm not playing winners and losers here. I'm just saying on the surface, that's your first offer. You're showing you're very serious. And I actually give the Canucks credit for taking that offer without nibbling around if you've ever negotiated anything, whether it's fantasy football trades or whatever, sometimes when you basically have the deal, sometimes the nibbling part gets annoying. I'm just saying good for the Canucks for seeing what they could do with the other 4 or 5 teams that were involved here and then picking the best package. I think that's the good way to do business. And look, Bill Guerin worked with Patrick Colvine and Jim Rutherford in Pittsburgh. They were part of teams front office that won 2 Stanley Cups there. And so I think sometimes having that kind of working relationship makes it easier just to get down to it. But, the more I've thought about it, the more I've talked to people over the last couple of days since the trade happened, I don't think there were too many teams that could beat that package and still want to make the trade. Like, the Canucks needed this young center. They needed a defenseman with something that was intriguing. Like, I'm not talking a veteran number 6, if you know what I'm saying. And, the first round pick, I think it would be expected. But so they needed a lot to be compelled to make this deal, and they got it. And so I think it's almost a perfect. Most teams that we might say, hey, they'd love Quinn Hughes, just couldn't give up that much. They either wouldn't have those pieces at all, or if they gave up those pieces, getting Quinn Hughes would be besides the point, right? Because it'd be like, oh wow, we've carved out our heart to replace our liver or something. Like, it would be like it wouldn't make any sense. But for the Wild, I mean, this is perfect. I think. Like, look, they might. I think there's every reason to believe that Zeev Buium will be like a great player in Vancouver for a long time. And there might be a day somewhere down the world, down the line here, where we're like, oh, the Wild could really use him. But they got Quinn Hughes in his prime, at a moment where they've signed Kaprizov, where I think they're going to be more active. I mean, what a trade! I think it's one of these ones. I can see it from both ends. I think both teams did well given the constraints, and there's a lot of constraints here. Quinn Hughes is not just a Norris Trophy winner; he's 26, right? Not old. He's a captain of the Canucks. He effectively, had a conversation where he said, "I won't be staying, so I should probably be going," which isn't the same as saying trade me, but it's there's some nuance there. But the Canucks were in a spot where they began to understand with the way the season was going that they had to move him, and they got it done pretty quickly. Like this came together in less than a week, and with one trade offer. So I mean, that's a really unique trade. There's a reason why it wasn't rumored out there, because as Bill Guerin told everyone, he was making meatballs when it happened. It shows you he didn't even know the timing it was that he would get that call. But obviously, pretty stunning move, and I think it could have massive ramifications on. This is a special season too. Like, let's not go. I know we still have to get into the trade, but like, this just adds to this. The lore is high already on 25-26 season. I think there's a lot of interesting things going on around the league, and this jumps to the head of the list.
Yeah, absolutely. But I find it funny that we got this move this soon, considering people were complaining like, "Oh, there's no trades." Everyone said there are going to be trades.
Who's complained louder and longer than us? I feel like I bring that up every episode. So let's put it on ourselves.
Fair. That's very fair. I also was asking at the beginning what you were doing because of that meatball anecdote from Bill Guerin, which I think is hilarious. You're just minding your own business cooking, and then arguably the best trade, the biggest trade your franchise has ever made goes down right after. I thought that was such a funny anecdote. And I really admire the fact that the Wild were able to make this work, even though they weren't getting assurances that Quinn Hughes might not sign an extension after this, right? Like, he could still leave as a free agent in 2027. But if you're Minnesota and you have Kirill Kaprizov signed and you've made all these other moves to try to at least be competitive, like, this is as win now of a move as you can make. Like, I do like that move on the surface for that.
Well, and it follows a pretty win now move in signing a guy to a $17 million a year extension, as they did in preseason. So, it's a logical move because of where they're at. And let's face it, the Minnesota Wild have been a team, and look, they've been a perennial playoff team of late, but even winning a round has proved difficult. So I admire it, because I think if you kept doing the same thing in Bill Guerin's seat and just hoping it to change, it wasn't going to change. Like, he's out there managing. He's taking risks. Like, there's risk in this. To add to your point, though, yeah, he might not sign in Minnesota. He might get traded this summer. Like, I don't think I think the most likely outcome, quite honestly, is an extension at this point in time. But you're right. No one knows for sure how it's going to go. No one knows how comfortable he's going to feel there, what that's going to be like. But they still would have the option because he's under contract through next year. This is why it was important for Vancouver, I think, to trade him basically right now before the holiday roster freeze or in early January. Like, I think the longer this went on, ironically, they were going to lose a lot more leverage and probably not get the kind of package they got. And so, the Canucks as an organization, I think they deserve some of the criticism they're getting in terms of not building a better team around Quinn Hughes and allowing it to get to the point where he wanted to leave. But from the point where he wasn't going to stay, maybe there's a more accurate way to put it, they did well with the trade. I mean, I don't think there's any way around that. Marco Rossi, steps in. He played top line center for them in the game in New Jersey on Sunday. Buium, had a couple points in that game, but I think more importantly, he's young and has a lot of upside and can be the kind of, I'm not saying he's going to be the second best defenseman in the world, which is probably where Quinn Hughes is today, or second or third, wherever you want to place him. But he can be an impact guy in his own right. Plus they get Ogren, plus they get a pick. And they end this when they ended it. I mean, I think that it's one of the rare. I don't want to sit on the fence, but I do think both sides, should feel pretty good after that deal.
I honestly don't think it's. I mean, everyone will have the opinion they would want to have on this trade. I'm very much in agreement with you. I think both teams made out as well as they could have with this trade. Like, it's very rare you get like a winner-winner situation, but like, and I understand that Quinn Hughes could always move on, but it's Quinn Hughes. It's the number 2 defenseman in the world. And I'm really bullish on Zeev Buium. I think he's a stud. I like the offense that he could bring, his skating ability. Like, watching him at the World Juniors, he was really good last year with the United States. Like, I think this dude could be the real deal.
And
like,
swagger, man. I remember I met him. I met him in Florida, the first Florida Edmonton Cup. You know, they bring the prospects down, and just was like chatting with him there. And you know, I didn't know a whole lot about him other than the sort of high level stuff. And man, what a like super mature kid, just confident. I mean, he's won everything, right? The World Juniors. He went and won the World Championships with USA last year, and so yeah, he can be a game changer in his own right. I mean, it's going to probably take him some time. Like, let's not. I think it would be unfair to just be like, okay, he's now going to play X number of minutes and do this or that. But to get him and a center and another prospect, I know Ogren's a little lower down on sort of the prospect rankings, and a first round pick. That's pretty tidy. I don't know, you know, there's a lot of work still to be done in Vancouver. Frankly, I wouldn't say there's a lot of work to be done in Minnesota, because getting the pieces like Quinn Hughes is the hard part. But obviously, I think they need to steel themselves down the middle a little bit. And you know, I would expect them to basically they're going to not adopt a cautious posture now. I mean, they still got a couple months to the trade deadline. They've had a good season. You know, they've got great goaltending going on. Yeah, there's a lot to like about the Wild, and there was the ultimate world where we were talking about them trading Kaprizov right before the season. So I think that's what's exciting there. Is I saw I tweeted about this, and some people were kind of like hating in the comments, but I actually really believe their cup window's open. Like genuinely, you know, I'm not saying they're the best team in the league today, but they now have the things in place that are almost impossible to get in place, where they could win a Stanley Cup very quickly here if they make the right moves or get the right luck or some combination of both those things.
Yeah, I was going to ask about, you know, what could be next for them in terms of adding an impact forward, an impact center to kind of shore up that part of their team, or what other moves Bill Guerin could do. Because, I mean, even after making a trade like that, Minnesota for me will still be a team to watch ahead of March's trade deadline.
Yeah, I mean, they're now weakened in terms of the things they can trade. That's the only downside. You know, like you can only amass so many picks and prospects other teams want, or young players. Like, but they're definitely they're not stopping at this point. I mean, you know, this is a couple of the steps to the way there. You just wonder, like, I don't know what centers are going to be truly available, so that it's hard to get going. But if that guy in Pittsburgh ever becomes available, he will remind you he was a friend of Bill Guerin's and a teammate who won a Stanley Cup once upon a time. It's way too premature.
CJ?
That's not a rumor. That's a like putting 1 and 1, you know, 1 + 1 = 2, like together. But that's still a big if. And I don't know they have to make this whatever trade it is now. I mean, whether it ends up being a Ryan O'Reilly or if Nazem Kadri, let's see where he's at in the new year. Wouldn't be surprised to see his name start getting floated a little more aggressively. I mean, there will be other centers available, but as we know, there's just never that many. And so, you know, it's pretty clear Bill Guerin understands the need to strike. So I think if he sees any opportunity, he's going to get in there.
Ryan O'Reilly would be a good fit on that team. Nazem Kadri might make producer Drew rip all of his hair out if he dons a Minnesota Wild jersey. But those two guys would make a lot of sense.
And that's the hard part with this Central Division, right? Is probably the two best teams in the league play beside the Minnesota Wild. Colorado right now, I think, is unquestionably the best team, but you might have Dallas second. We'll see who else is in that conversation. And so right now, Minnesota is playing one of those teams in the first round, like just based on where the standings are, probably Dallas. But I mean, there's still enough runway for things to get jogged around a bit. You know, that makes it that makes the math a little tougher on what you're doing, and might be one more reason for me to smash on this playoff format I don't love. But
CJ, the playoff format, there's nothing wrong with it for CJ.
The problem is we've seen this before, even in other divisions. Like, it's evolved now these last 2 years, I think, in the Central, but there was a time in the Atlantic where you legit had like the best teams in the league, and one of them's out in the first or second round. They just, you know, but that aside, Bill Guerin doesn't control the playoff format. All he could do is build the best team he can and give them a real chance. And I just think he's raised the ceiling, even while it weakens a team in some ways. It's taking players out of their actual lineup that aren't easily replaced, even with sort of stopgaps, whether that's AHL call-ups or what have you. But I still think all day the NHL needs this kind of action. It needs like, when you couple this with the move they made in Carolina to get Rantanen and then flip him to Dallas last year, I'm like, man, hopefully this is the trend. Like, maybe teams are going to start doing this, because obviously Carolina didn't have those same assurances from Rantanen, and they had a little less time to work with, which is why they flipped him so quickly in terms of, getting him committed to signing an extension. But, this is the spice that helps drive the storylines, man. I mean, I found myself watching a Wild Bruins game Sunday.
Me too.
I mean, and I don't mean to say I would never, but like it adds some juice, right, to these games. So keep bringing it.
One last Minnesota question before I ask more about the Vancouver side of things. What are some advantages Bill Guerin is going to have to lean on as GM if he hopes to entice Quinn Hughes to stay long term?
I think the biggest advantage is just getting him there. One person mentioned to me that kind of understands how these things go, that it's hard to imagine that sometimes when you're selling a free agent on a place, it's harder to there's just a lot of things you got to get their mind there. Whereas when you get there, you start to see it. You get to know people, like you get a personal connection. And so I think the first advantage he has is that Quinn Hughes is already playing for his team before Christmas. He's going to settle in. He's going to presumably make friends with some teammates or people that work around the organization. He's going to get more comfortable. I think like any player, that's going to take some time, but he starts to get comfortable. He doesn't make a decision until July 1st at earliest on his extension. So he's got 7+ months to start getting used to the place. And look, Bill Guerin has a good team. That's the other advantage he has, is he has good players to throw out there on the ice with Quinn Hughes, which will probably be fun for him to play with Brock Faber and get on a power play, and he's feeding Kaprizov and Boldy and some of these other guys. So, I think that's an advantage. And then he has CBA, we'll call them advantages, in that, Minnesota will be the only team, unless they trade him before July 1st, that can ever sign him to an 8-year deal, because that provision's changing in the CBA. And their only team that, again, unless they trade him, that can give him sort of maxed up signing bonus money, the way that Kaprizov got in his deal and many other top players have commanded their deals. And so it doesn't guarantee that Quinn Hughes is going to sign an 8-year deal on July 1st by any means, but it's at least possible. And I think when you add all that up, if the Wild have a good season, if they have a good playoff run, if he gets feeling comfortable there, like, why would he leave? I mean, I know we've all been focused on the brothers angle, and that's real. Like, those guys do want to play together. They've said it privately, publicly. I feel like they've talked about it enough that we know it's a real thing, but it doesn't mean that it has to happen right now. And in fact, it might not be the best thing. Like, the other thing we should remember is Luke Hughes. Like, if Quinn Hughes had been traded to New Jersey, Luke Hughes is probably seeing less opportunity. Like, he plays the same position as his brother. And that might be a little bit awkward, right? A little uncomfortable. So this could be something that happens down the road. And so I think Minnesota, truthfully, has a great opportunity to re-sign him. It's a hockey place. It's closer to home. His parents are in Detroit. It's a team that's trying to win, which is really what I think most of the top players want to get to. As much as we can, I'm sort of parroting, I guess, a little bit of the Bill Guerin quote here, but as much as players do want to get to, sunny locales and tax-friendly jurisdictions and all those things, I mean, you don't want to go there unless the team has a chance to win if you're the best of the best. And so, I think the Wild's chances of winning went up quite a bit over the weekend, even acknowledging some of the holes in their lineup, because I think they got some of the hard pieces in place now, and they've just got to make a few more moves to strengthen out that team.
So we go from Bill Guerin to Patrick Allvin. What's next for him and Jim Rutherford and the Vancouver Canucks after this trade? Who else could be on the move?
Well, I mean, it's going to be the veteran guys, I think, will be the focus. This was a unique circumstance, but you're talking the Kiefer Sherwoods, or maybe Teddy Bluger or Vander Kane. Some of the other guys that are especially on expiring deals. I mean, we'll see if Connor Garland gets included in that. my sense is that they don't really want to move him. I don't think anyone's untouchable. Obviously, if you've just traded Quinn Hughes, you're not slamming the phone down if someone puts something great in front of you for Garland. But it's not their intention. I mean, even look what they did with the trade. Like they added players that played in their lineup right away on Sunday. So like they're not trying to tear everything to nothing. So I think it's going to be more the veteran guys that get moved out, and we'll see how things develop. I mean, it's pretty crazy that they've traded away now Hughes and JT Miller in the last, not even a full calendar year between those trades. Given that, 2 seasons ago, those two guys were pretty important parts of a team that went to Game 7 against the Oilers in the second round and got to Game 6 with a chance to win the series, which sometimes gets forgotten. So, I mean, Vancouver's. We kind of know the dynamic there. It's they're trying to resist the rebuild, Julian. So I think that they're going to retool.
I wonder if Vancouver management gets a phone call from some GM who expresses interest in Elias Pettersson. I wonder what they do with that. Is that someone who's untouchable for them?
What's untouchable probably is his contract, and he's played much better this year too. So I'm not trying to pick on that, but that, I'm not sure he's still viewed in the light of the guy who signed that big extension he did. Right. So I don't think he's untouchable in that they would never consider it, but you'd have to, if you're making that trade at this point in time, I think it's only if you're getting surplus value back. And so, I'm not going to say that could never happen, but it's hard to see in this moment, but let's let things play on a little while. I mean, if he plays better, or if, I've already mentioned the center market's a little soft or not, certainly not filled out. I mean, maybe we get to that point where they're thinking along those lines.
For sure. Wow. I gotta say, hopefully that trade was satisfactory enough, as I know you've been wanting for an actual trade over these last couple of weeks, but I'm glad we're able to break that down.
We should mention a little bit the teams that didn't get him, right? Like the Devils didn't get him, and the Devils
There's a lot of teams that didn't get him,
right? But the Devils, obviously, for to unite the brothers was a factor, and they've been struggling with injuries and some other things. Like the heat is up in that market.
What do you think New Jersey does next now, since they obviously did not get Quinn?
I mean, their focus right now is on more of a frontline forward, I think, to add to their group. So I could see them getting in those markets, but it's. They couldn't put together the package Minnesota did ultimately. Like they just didn't. No. It didn't fit as well. I saw people wanting to talk about Hischier and stuff like that. To remember, Hischier's only a year and a half of himself away from potential UFA. Like Vancouver didn't want that kind of player. Like they want a player that they control their rights for a little while, that they're going to get a few seasons there. That's a little younger. I'm not saying they wouldn't want. The fit wasn't nearly as good. Detroit was in the mix on Hughes, and I think that they're a team that probably could get closest to Minnesota in terms of just because they do have a lot of prospects and young players that they've drafted the last number of years, and they could have some amount of confidence. Yeah, I guess New Jersey falls in this category, that even if they're not getting assurances from Pat Brisson, the agent for Quinn Hughes, that maybe he would sign there, given that his family's there, and he spends his off seasons near Detroit. So, they're kind of an interesting one. I mean, Carolina's kicking around the outskirts of this. Buffalo, the Rangers. I mean, the Rangers.
Buffalo, I was so intrigued about them being involved in this. We'll get to Buffalo later in the show. But of all the teams mentioned there, I was like, the Buffalo Sabres are interested. Like, they need a shakeup in the worst way. But that's the team I was looking at like, oh, wait a minute. What are they going to do? They
need a shakeup, and there's been talks on Bowen Byram between the Sabres and the Canucks going way back. So I think that there's at least a player that's, if not the centerpiece of a potential deal, a pretty important piece of a potential deal that the Canucks have had some interest in. So I think that was the main connection. But again, these teams couldn't put together the kind of deal that made sense. The Rangers are interesting too. I mean, the Rangers are desperate to shake up their team in the sense of like bringing in a game breaker. But, they sort of were poised to be one of the teams, say, if we had went to summer 2026 with lots of free agency. Like, I think that they could have been, the major player there because they have cap space and obviously a lot to sell in terms of the organization, where they play, all those types of things. And then all those players signed. And now it's harder for them to make the trade because they just don't have all the pieces that you'd want to trade, or they want to keep those guys. So anyway, it was interesting. 5 or 6 teams kind of really in there. The Philadelphia's checked in, and I'm sure lots of conversations were had. But Minnesota making one offer and making that deal is pretty. I can't remember that happening for such a big trade where it's that clean cut.
Like one offer, like you don't even have like, all right, like 3 or 4 other proposed, just one offer, and you're like, all right, cool, we'll make this work. That's kind of ballsy from Bill Guerin.
I think it's a great way to do business. So many people in negotiations waste the first part of the negotiation, like trying not to show their cards, right? Like trying to be like, I'm asking for way too much money, or the company's offering way too little, and you're going to settle in the middle. I think it's kind of a power move to basically see what they wanted and put it together and be like, that's the package. And it would have been a risk for Vancouver if they came back wanting more, or tried to be like, are you sure you don't want to add in a pick or like an extra pick? Like something like that could blow it up. So I think it's the power move when you got a great thing to offer. Like, I like that. I like that being direct, but that's just maybe my style in negotiations.
Anything else you want to mention about the trade before I move on to the other trade that went on throughout the weekend?
No, that one's good. Let's get to Edmonton, Pittsburgh.
Tristan Jarry, Stuart Skinner, goaltenders being swapped between both the Oilers and the Penguins. Brett Kulak also involved. Samuel Poulin also involved. A second-round pick in 2029 also involved. And also the Edmonton Oilers made a trade with Nashville to get Spencer Stastny, defenseman, in exchange for a third-round pick in 2027. What do you think of the duo of moves from the Edmonton Oilers? Notably, of course, getting Tristan Jarry from Pittsburgh.
You just think finally for Edmonton, right? There's been so much discussion about their goaltending. And I think in a weird way that became a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy, in that with so much focus in the market on the goaltending, Stuart Skinner could do 3 great things, and then the one bad game, like it sent everyone over the edge. And like it just was getting to the point that wasn't good for him or for them. And this was the goalie that the Oilers figured was the best guy that they could go out and get. And obviously feel good about the fact he, has his home in Edmonton, that he played for the Oil Kings back in the day, won a Memorial Cup for them in 2014, and has a good feeling for the market. And, they believe that playing behind the team they have, that he could, be someone who raises the ceiling for them. They gave up an awful lot here. Like, they didn't want to give up Brett Kulak, but there was cap challenges with this trade. I think one of the main reasons Edmonton held on as long as they did without making a trade is that they had Stuart Skinner and Calvin Pickard signed a really cheap contracts. They had one of the cheapest duos, if not the cheapest in the entire league, prior to making that deal. And that came with some cap benefits, allowed them to spend money elsewhere. And obviously that duo was good enough to get them 2 consecutive cup finals, but didn't get them over the hump. So, the timing's a little interesting doing it now. I think Jarry had been out a little bit in November, but getting him basically with still half a season to go is some benefit, but it's a huge risk. I mean, as we know, goaltending performance is not linear. It's not can't put it on a nice graph and just figure out exactly where things are going to go. Jarry's had some great runs during his career, but he's the same guy that went through waivers last year and played some games in the American Hockey League as well. So, gutsy trade. They swing the Stastny deal afterwards to effectively replace Kulak in their lineup, shake things up a little bit. Can't argue with the results on Saturday. They looked great against the Maple Leafs, and it was driven by their top players. Jarry had a nice night for them, and crazy for him. He's going right back to Pittsburgh this week as a member of the Oilers, which hopefully he's moved on from that Penguins mask by then.
I was about to say, I love it when a guy gets traded and clearly they haven't had all of their gear come in. So you have like the different style helmet with the gear. Like Tim Thomas once had like 3 different teams on once he was wearing for a game. I think with Dallas, like weird stuff like that. I'm always intrigued by it, but he found it wasn't too clashing with the mask with his Oilers gear, I thought.
I mean, you have better sense of style than me, so I'm not going to I thought it was weird to see like a black and gold helmet on a blue jersey.
I mean, it wasn't awful.
Yeah, it definitely wasn't awful. It just, but it was sort of, it stood out because you don't see it a lot.
For sure.
But there's no way he's going back into Pittsburgh with that Penguins mask.
No.
I don't know how quickly you can paint a goalie mask, but giving it 72 hours instead of 24 hours, I'm sure they can work some magic.
Yeah. Also, I'll say this too, like I feel a little bit for Stuart Skinner. Obviously, the Oilers needed a solution for their goaltending issues. But for a guy like Stuart Skinner, who was still able to help his team get to back-to-back Stanley Cup Finals, for him to get jettisoned to Pittsburgh, like I was thinking of him over the weekend, and the fact he's able to win in his last game with the Edmonton Oilers. I'm sure you saw the moment between him and Calvin Pickard on the ice before they go off down the tunnel towards the dressing room. Like, a bit of a tough way for him to leave in Edmonton, but
he's a hometown guy too, right? Grew up in St. Albert, I want to say, but certainly if it's not St. Albert, somewhere, one of the suburbs of Edmonton. So, it must be extra sort of bittersweet given that. He got to live out the dream, capital D, but he also saw the underside of it, right? He was so often kind of the lightning rod, always looked to me. I mean, when I was around him, nothing, but it couldn't have been a better professional. Handled a lot of that attention, but this is unfortunately, this is what you sign up for in big business, right? This is there's not a lot of room for, I guess, feelings or, for making decisions. And, it could be great for him. He stands to be probably the best UFA goalie this summer. So he gets a chance to go to a new team himself, try that on for size, maybe step out of the fishbowl, maybe finds a great home himself in Pittsburgh and he extends there. And if not, he's a UFA July 1st. So, kind of rips the Band-Aid off. I'm with you. I mean, I don't see any of this as his fault. And there was lots of talk. They didn't want to move him, right? That if they're bringing another goalie, they were trying to do it to have Skinner be the tandem mate, but that didn't really work out. And, I think this is a great move for Pittsburgh, quite honestly. I mean, if you always look at the trade as a whole, then you look at how each individual team, the components they might be looking at, the Penguins shed all of Jarry's salary, over $5 million for the next couple of years. Who, again, they had him buried in the AHL last year. They get a second round pick, which is additive. They get Brett Kulak, who I think will help their blue line and also could be a candidate to be traded again before the deadline as a pending UFA. And they get Stuart Skinner, who might end up playing better than Jarry. Like, it's not impossible. As we know, goaltending it's voodoo. It's voodoo as the line goes, but it's very unpredictable. And so, he's younger than Tristan Jarry. They might replace the guy they traded away with the guy they got, plus they got a defenseman who can turn into another asset or help them and a second round pick. So, I mean, from the Penguins end of this, there's a lot to like, even though the focus in Pittsburgh is probably more on those blown leads they've just endured than the trade, even as we, exit the weekend, get to Monday.
You shared something in the chat before we got going. Pittsburgh has had at least 3 massive blown leads in the last 5 or 6 weeks, against Toronto. And then back-to-back this weekend, massive blown leads against Utah and San Jose. That's incredible to see. Just not necessarily in a good way, but holy crap, what a weekend for Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I mean, the stat is there's been 3 games where a team has come back and won from 3 goals down in the third period this year, and all 3 of the teams were the ones you mentioned against Pittsburgh. So the common denominator is it's been Pittsburgh that's been blowing those leads. And I've always been a little dubious on sort of their playoff positioning. I mean, credit to them. They won a lot of games early in the season. They've been in a good spot, but didn't feel to me like it was too tenable. But to lose games in this fashion, I mean, they did pick up a couple of points by getting to overtime against Utah after going up 3-0, down 4-3, tying it, then losing 5-4 in overtime. But yeah, those are some body blows, and I've noticed the fans really, understandably getting on the team and the media and all that as you'd expect.
I wonder if there's time, but I wonder if this is officially the beginning of the slide. With all these teams kind of finding ways to remain competitive, particularly in the Eastern Conference, you're bound to see teams kind of fall out of it. Is this the beginning of the slide for Pittsburgh? We'll see in time, but not a great weekend for them.
No, and it's everyone's feeling the crunch of how compressed the standings are. So like, it's never good to lose points, but they gave points back and those sets of games, but even just a couple games this week. Tough to watch if you're a Penguins fan.
So the Hughes trade goes down. The Skinner-Jarry trade goes down. Could we expect more, especially with the roster freeze to come?
I mean, it's certainly possible. I don't even know, like the fact those two trades happened on the same day on Friday, I think is a coincidence. Like I don't think there's no common denominator that one domino led to the other falling, beyond the fact that there's sort of the collective common denominator, which is that the trade freeze is upon us by the end of this coming week. So, I think that could force some action. We talked a little bit on the previous episode about the fact that retained salary deals, this is kind of a window to get something done. I think there's sort of human element. Like you start the way we feel excited and energized by, maybe it compels some people elsewhere to get down to business. But I can't point you to one city or one team necessarily. I mean, I think New Jersey's probably a good one to watch, just because they've had so many injuries. I mean, that's the toughest thing there. And you usually can't really trade your way out of injuries, if you know what I mean. Like often with injuries, you just kind of muck through it and with your call ups and go forward that way. But, we'll see where the Devils end up. And as I mentioned, I could definitely see the Devils. There's been some smoke around them in Nashville. Maybe they're targeting one of the Nashville forwards that's available, or, I think that they really need to bolster their top six.
Okay, let's move on to the Buffalo Sabres. A couple days ago, our colleagues at The Athletic, Tim Graham and Matthew Fairburn, reported that the Sabres were having internal discussions about possibly replacing GM Kevyn Adams. Where could they be at with that? What more are you hearing about the Buffalo Sabres situation? And if they do get to that point, who could end up replacing him?
Well, it's a hard story to further because no one's confirming it. They ended a road trip in Seattle on Sunday night and were due to fly home with a couple days before their next game. And it seems to be this idea that the shakeup's going to happen in that window. And I've heard the same kind of whispers, but I don't have anything concrete. And we're talking about someone's job here. Mm-hmm. I think though, look, if you look back to the offseason, ownership was clearly trying to bolster things in management and brought Jarmo Kekalainen into that front office. And he's been around the team a lot in the first third of the season plus. So, I think that it's natural to look at him as at least at minimum a temporary successor, if not a permanent one, should they move on from Kevyn Adams. And, really big picture, the reason why we're having this kind of talk and why management would be having those discussions is it's another season that's going down the drain. And, they've got some hard decisions in Buffalo. And, you start with the fact that Alex Tuch's a pending UFA, but even some of the players have been there. Like how much more can they endure, right? How do you to reverse course? And it might fall on someone else's shoulders to do that. So, it certainly doesn't bode well. The fact these conversations are happening is not good for Kevyn Adams. There's definitely whispers around the Board of Governors meeting last week just about this kind of talk of Buffalo looking at these changes. How exactly it goes down and what it looks like is still something we're working on. It's still a little bit TBD, but it feels as though there's a big decision coming there. And I think it's done with recognizing that even getting a jump on some of these decisions, like changing a GM in the middle of the season doesn't do a whole lot, but I think it would make sense to do it, to bring in someone like Jarmo if that's the direction they go, just because he's had months now to see what's operating, right? To get a feel for what he's jumping into. And someone like that would be far better, I think, situated to make some hard calls as we get towards the trade deadline this year. Because frankly, it looks like another year where the Sabres are going to be selling when we get into March.
Between their interest in Quinn Hughes and this report from Matthew and Tim, something big seems like it's bound to happen in Buffalo over the next couple months. Like we're waiting for something to get opened up here, whether it's a GM move or a trade or something. They want to do something seismic.
It's about time. I mean, they've made, I guess the problem is that the counter to what I'm about to say would be like, yeah, well, they made a seismic trade when they traded Jack Eichel to Vegas and then watched them lead the Golden Knights to a Stanley Cup. So, just making a trade could make it look like you're doing something, but you might be doing harm rather than good. But yeah, they got to get it right. And it just feels like, Kevyn Adams is 5+ years on the job. He's getting chanted, fire Adams in the building, like all that stuff. It's not good for the brand. It's not good for business. And so I can understand ownership got to this point where these conversations are happening. But again, I don't want to go too far because I don't have any reason to know exactly how it's going to shake down here. But I do think we're going to learn, in the very near future.
Before we get to Ask CJ, one more question for you. In fact, we'll make it a very brief Leafs corner. What do you think of the rising concern among Toronto Maple Leafs fans about Auston Matthews, who he's still a great player on all accounts, but I think it's fair to say he doesn't look like the Auston Matthews of old. And even the stats he's projected to have this year, they fall well below the standard that fans have grown accustomed to with Auston Matthews, who could hit 60 goals in his sleep if he wants to. How do you evaluate this situation?
It's a tough one. I mean, with Matthews, there's always this sort of specter of how healthy he is. And the messaging behind the scenes throughout this year is that he has been healthy, other than that period of time where he missed 2 weeks or so back in November. But, you don't know exactly what you're judging in this case, in terms of like are his limitations that his body just can't do it for some reason because he's dealing with some pain, discomfort, some limitations, or, is it something else? Is it the system the Leafs are playing? Is it Mitch Marner being gone? I mean, that has to be at least, if you're going down this road, that has to be part of the things you consider as possibilities. And I don't know where to land on it, but it's, the conversation's starting to pick up for a couple reasons. I mean, his numbers are his numbers. What's he at? 13 goals, I think, in 25 games ish.
Ish.
So, that's definitely below his usual goals per game mark over a long career. And, the Leafs got pretty soundly outplayed. The Leafs top players got outplayed by the best players of the Edmonton Oilers on Saturday night. So there's extra focus there. And then after the game, Craig Berube said he needs kind of more from his leaders. And Auston Matthews is a leader on the team, is wearing a C. So I think I can understand why the conversation is bubbling and building, but it's hard for me to know, to come out too scorching here, other than to say the Leafs need a better version of Auston Matthews to get to where they want to go to over time. I just don't know what needs to happen to get him in there, into that position. And I do think might not all be on his shoulders. I mean, this is not a team. He's still one of the best shooters, if not the best shooter in the world. It's not a team that's built to like get in the ozone and set up great shots for him. It's not. It's way more of a grinding style. They almost play Matthews like Patrice Bergeron in terms of his usage. I'm not saying in terms of his output being as spectacular on the defensive side of the puck, but like, maybe a change needs to be made to, if numbers are what you're judging him on, maybe be put in some better spots. The other thing too, their power plays absolutely stunk this year, and that obviously impacts, goal totals for him and John Tavares and William Nylander, sort of the main guys that could score in that position. So I think it's a combination of those factors. And the Leafs aren't winning enough. So when you're not winning enough, everyone's looking for a reason, and this seems to be the reason du jour. And I can't deny that. I can't deny at all that it's a factor in it, but I think it's more complex than the way it gets portrayed. I think sometimes it's just like, well, now this guy stinks. Well, it's like, no, it doesn't just stink.
Yeah. There's other factors.
In fact, if I could take odds, as I bet he will score at a rate we've seen in the past, in the future again. But will it happen this season? What needs to happen? Those are all big questions. And this is a discussion point behind the scenes too. I think more than anything, though, the Leafs haven't lacked for goal scoring this year. As much as his individual totals aren't crazy, I mean, it's more about the focus internally is way more on the defensive side of the puck, and that's where I think the coaching staff is wanting him to have his gaze. And so, weirdly, I kind of think I think he's doing. You would love to have your cake and eat it too, but the reason that's a saying is you usually can't have both. And I think he's being pressed like a lot of his teammates to focus on defensive game, and maybe that's coming at the cost of some offense.
I appreciate your perspective on this, because while there are numbers that support the fact that he's been on a decline, I am not ready to subscribe to the fact that Auston Matthews is washed unless there is an underlying severe injury that will affect him for the rest of his career, that will have him at the level that he's at now. But I just refuse to believe that a guy who could produce as much as he's done in the past, and as you mentioned, has the shot, has the goal scoring totals, I just refuse to believe that he's just washed. And there has to be other factors that lead to this.
Yeah, I mean,
that has to be.
Historically, there have been a few players that were elite talents like him, Mike Bossy, Bobby Orr, but others that, even Mario Lemieux to a degree, that their careers were spectacular, but they were cut short significantly by injuries. Like I'm not saying we're getting that there with him, but I guess that's a possibility. But if that doesn't happen, the other part of it is great players often have to kind of evolve and change their game over time. And yes, the decline kicks in, like they're not as dominant as they once were. I mean, frankly, the numbers sort of show 23 to 27 tends to be about the prime age for an NHL player. I know there's a few guys around the league, including that guy in Pittsburgh, kind of that defy that to a degree. But even Crosby, of course, he's just found ways to still be amazing, but he's not as amazing individually as he was at 25. I just don't think that's the case. I mean, there's things he can't do. And so there might be an early element of that coming to play for Auston, just given some of the health challenges he's had. But I think I'm with you. I'm not willing to go there. I want to see a little bit more before we're saying things like those are the kind of takes that get you burnt. I'll give you an example on this very show. It wasn't that long ago. Remember we had this discussion about whether Nathan McKinnon should be considered the best player in the world or Connor McDavid. And I was hesitant to say that was the case while giving McKinnon all his flowers. Have you seen McDavid's output here the last, he's basically caught the guy in the scoring race. The Oilers are winning again. He looks like Superman. Like the goal he scored in Toronto and was insane. The first goal on Saturday. One-way traffic. I'm just saying, and I actually took some subsequent shit from others for I'm saying shit. Give us the E. Give us the explicit E.
Well, we did it. We got the E on this episode. Great job, CJ.
I took some comments from people like, oh, no way you actually believe that. I was like, I do believe that McDavid's still probably the best player in the world, even if in this moment he's 20 points behind in the scoring race or whatever. And lo and behold, you wait 2 weeks. He literally, I think it's his best 5-game stretch by points ever, which is insane given his career. And now he's right back up there and the Oilers are starting to climb. And so I know that we kind of live in a hot take world and we're supposed to bang the table and say, this is what's true. But what's true, I just trust things over a longer period. And so Matthews not been as good as Elise would like, or he would like. Might be injury related, might be age related, decline related, might be a bit of both, might be the systems the teams play and the emphasis on defense that his coach is asking from him, and might be the fact that power play stinks. But he could score 7 goals in the next 6 games and I wouldn't even blink, and then we probably wouldn't be talking about this anymore before Christmas. Also,
if we're getting a McKinnon versus McDavid points race from here on out, as of when we checked the stats for Sunday, it was within 4 points between McKinnon and McDavid. But if we're going to get those two battling for the Art Ross this year, sign me the hell up. I'm there for it.
Maybe Celebrini will hold, be able to hold in there too. Unfortunately, Bedard has a minor injury, so he's out a little while. Something like that might take him out of the mix. But I don't think it's anything serious for Bedard, but it does seem like it's going to definitely impact his next, certainly the next few games into the Christmas break.
When are you drafting up your Team Canada roster for us to dissect on the show, CJ?
Well, I don't have it today, so
I know you won't have it today.
Maybe as early as Thursday's show.
Oh, maybe.
I got a trade board to do this week, so I'm kind of knee deep in that.
Okay.
And if I'm doing it for our show, I should probably try to convert it into something the Athletic can use, because why do the work? And it could serve two platforms. So anyway, maybe as early as Thursday, maybe it's next Monday. We'll see.
All right, we'll figure that out. I just love teasing it and bringing it up because I love looking at roster projections.
But if you're Canadian and you care about that announcement, noon on December 31st is the word. could change timing wise, but pretty exciting day. You get, if you're into the World Juniors, you got Canada US that night, flipping the calendar over to 2026, and you got a Canadian Olympic men's announcement anyway to chew on.
Oh yeah, can't wait for December 31st. I got a couple questions for you for Ask CJ. Thank you to everyone who sent in questions on X or Discord or on Blue Sky. One question from Dallas Stars fan, who is very active on the SDPN Discord. When will CJ stop doubting the 100%ers? That's what he wants to know. I'm
not doubting you anymore because I made the comments I made, and then I saw Jesse Blake in person down at the morning skate Saturday morning in Toronto, and he's like, "What are you doing?" Like, I'm a 100%er. And I looked in my Instagram DMs, and there were people, some that I've interacted with in the past, but some I don't even know at all, who were, saying, "What do you mean? I'm a 100%er." I had someone text me egg sandwich. If you remember that reference from way back, remember. That was like that was a clap back to like way long time ago. It was at the end of a long episode. I was like, basically send me egg sandwich if you got to the end of this, and like a bunch of people did. So yeah, it's not that I doubt them. I doubt myself maybe sometimes more than them.
And
I'm
you
like,
shouldn't.
Well, just because I'm like, sometimes we go on long, sometimes we get way off the plot. This wasn't one of those shows, but sometimes we get like all over, and I'm like, are people just like, they must just be like click, 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 click. Like, what? This isn't what we showed up for.
Dude, 9 times out of 10, we can't always be perfect. 9 times out of 10, when we go off the path that's set, I'm very happy about it because I know we're getting something interesting out of it. So like, don't ever doubt yourself if you can. I know it's tough to deal with that, but like, you don't have to.
I should flip that question around. It's probably not me doubting you 100%ers. Thank you for your loyalty and giving us that many hours. It's insane if you actually added up how many hours you've listened to Julian and I do our thing over a long time now. But it's more doubting me. I'm like, sometimes it's like this, I'm bored with myself. How could anyone else be interested in this? So
speaking of people taking in however minutes of our show, which thank you. Have you checked your Spotify Wrapped for this year? You're a Spotify person, right?
I am, but I share my Spotify with Lindsay, so I feel like I don't get like a true, I don't get a true reflection of what is mine and hers, and we get like a weird Spotify Wrapped. Aren't
you a Swiftie though? So like, if Taylor Swift she's probably up in your Spotify Wrapped. Like, that's not that weird.
Yeah, no, it's not that. I think Zach Bryan might have been my number one actually.
Okay, so Zach Bryan was your top artist. For those who are curious what mine, Kendrick was mine. The Weeknd, Tame Impala, Future, and Clips were in my top 5 this year. I was just curious with the Spotify Wrapped stuff. But thank you to everybody who has been tagging the show or mentioning that they're
I've seen those. Yeah. That's cool too.
Yeah.
James Myrtle even sent us one. He
randomly texted us that he has listened to how many minutes of our show this year, which we appreciate you, Myrtle. Thank you.
I don't know if he's 100%er, but he's like a 98%er if it's not 100%er.
He's as close to being a super fan of the show as you can get without listening to every minute of the show.
But it's funny because he's low key about it. Like, I see James in person. Obviously, we interact about work stuff. He doesn't bring it up, and all of a sudden he just sends that. I was like, oh, you're out there. He's like lurking in the comments, kind of.
Yeah. I've had a few times where I've interacted with Myrtle, and he'll bring up the pod, and he'll be like, yeah, I listen to you guys like all the time. I'm like, oh,
yeah, that's true. He's actually, I'm being unfair because he said to me, oh, good pod. He does send out like, oh, that was a good pod or something.
Yeah.
Or he'll again engage on something we got talking about. Yeah. He wasn't the one who gave me shit for the McKinnon-McDavid thing, but
I don't know the person who did. Do
no,
I?
But it's 100%er. It's someone who's definitely this deep into the pod and knows I'm now.
All right.
I'm sub-tweeting him, so to speak.
No beef from us here at the CJ Show. I'll get you 2 more quick questions here. From Congo Red, how do you find a good restaurant on the road? Anything you see while walking by? A personal recommendation? Or do you do research before going?
I was never much of a researcher. It's funny. It depends who I'm with. So, for example, last week I was at the Board of Governors meeting, and my main travel colleagues were Pierre Lebrun and Darren Dreger that I work with at TSN, Gino Retta, our cameraman Dave Parker. And those guys are all basically a little older than me. And so when I'm with them, I'll do the research because like I want to make sure I'm making a good call for the group. But then back in the day when I traveled a lot to Leafs games, and one of my media colleagues that was on the road, I'd always go to Sean McKenzie. Like Sean McKenzie, he knows what's up. I mean, his dad, Bob, who a lot of hockey people know, used to call him the luxury consultant. So like Sean knows good things when he sees them or tastes them or finds them. And he takes a lot of pleasure, quite honestly, in just researching things. So the best meals I've had by far on the road have almost all been with Sean McKenzie. Unfortunately, he and I don't travel in the same circles as often anymore. It's not to say it never happens, but that hasn't been as common. But I wasn't good. I always feel like so stressed about the work, or like not stressed, but like I almost can't get to the next part. I'd rather someone be like, hey, at 7, meet me here and we're going to go to this great place. And then I know I have till 6:50 to get my work done, and then, go meet so-and-so in the lobby and do that. So I relied on the brilliance of others to eat so well over these years.
Do you, when you're out somewhere and you got to write whatever story or feature or news hit you're writing on, do you end up Uber Eating a lot when you're in these different cities and you're trying to think like, okay, like what's a cool local spot that I can at least like take in, even if I'm not able to physically go there? Or do you just end up hitting like chain spots? Like, oh, you're in America, I could do like Buffalo Wild Wings as an example.
Yeah, probably more chain spots. I don't Uber Eats very often on the road. I've done it, but like that's not my normal pace. I know some people just like hunker in the hotel and work and do that. I need to get out. Like I almost need the energy of being among people. And
yeah, I
don't even mind writing stories, frankly, when there's a fair bit of noise. I mean, it kind of goes without saying. We work in hockey arenas often, which are not quiet. But even like I don't mind writing from, like a lobby bar or a Starbucks or something. Sweet Green used to be my go-to on the road in the US. Great salads. I was always looking to try to mix in a good salad along the way when I was traveling a lot. But I'd say, yeah, that's probably more my pace. But I love a good night out too. I was lucky we were up in Colorado Springs. We had 2 really nice dinners. Like we were done our work. Like we weren't distracted. In fact, we weren't really even on our phones much. And we were just like together telling stories. Like that's not much beats that. I mean, it's the same way with your family, with your friends and anything else. I mean, as you know, the media colleagues I have these guys are legit friends. I'm not putting a qualifier on it. They're no different than my buddies I grew up with or went to university with. I just met them through a different, had a first different meeting point, I guess we'll call it.
As an extension of that, Lucas wants to know, how often do you see the other insiders in the course of your day? Are you constantly running into Elliot Friedman and people from other networks, or is it more occasional?
I'd say occasional. I see Elliot a fair bit because I go down to Leafs morning skates often, and Elliot's there often. So I see him in person probably the most of the other insiders from the other networks. Saw Emily Kaplan and Frank Cervalli both at the Board of Governors meeting, had a coffee with Emily when I was there, but she lives in Chicago, Frank's in Philly. So, obviously at a huge event like the Stanley Cup final or something, we're going to see each other, but on a day-to-day basis, it's not a lot. But Elliot's probably my most common rival insider that I'm crossing paths with along the
rival.
The well, I mean,
he does work for.
He gets paid by different people than I do. So
rival makes sense.
I mean, I don't mean rival like there's some burning personal rivalry between him and I, but
there's no animosity.
The people that employ us haven't traditionally gotten along in any business, whether that's telecommunications or elsewhere.
It's just funny to hear rival. I know it's all love with Friedge and all that, but it is funny to hear.
I also worked
rival.
with Elliot for
that too
7 or 8 years probably. I mean, so it's look, we all know each other. It's a small business, but it's not that weird as you think. I mean, truth is not everyone goes to the same rinks, right? So I don't see everyone all the time.
Exactly. Anyway, thank you to everyone who sent in questions for Ask CJ. That's going to do it for our early week edition of the show. We'll be back later this week with a brand new episode of the CJ Show. If another big trade happens by then, I'm sure we'll get to that in due time. Anyways, CJ, great work as always, my man.
Thanks, buddy. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. And thank you to everyone who tapped in to the early week edition of The Chris Johnston Show. Peace.
The Chris Johnston Show. Follow Chris on Twitter @ReporterChris and follow Julian @JKA McKenzie.
The Chris Johnston Show.